Polypede Works here, coming to you once again with One Piece, chapter 1139, entitled Mountain Eater. So, we got some L's to cover in this chapter, but we'll get there soon enough because those L's lead into W's. So, to get it out the way, we have the 25th installment of the Yamato cover story, and it seems as though Who's Who is going to decapitate these two silhouettes with Yasue's blade. These two silhouettes are most likely Ulti and Page 1. So I was correct in saying that they're probably going to appear here, and from the end of all this going on, they're probably going to join Yamato. That's the likely situation. I do wonder if we're going to find out what Who's Who's actual name is. Because it has to be an alias. It has to be. But yeah, he's going to cut down these two rebels as they've been apprehended. So I wonder whether they're trying to strike out on their own. And they weren't going along with Who's Who. So he's just going to get rid of them. Maybe that's the case. Because that's weird that they were captured. Seeing as how strong they were. But maybe they're weakened because they did get the Tar beat out of them after the events of Onigashima. So, I don't know. Ulti got up the worst because she got hit by Big Mom and her like weird ultimate attack after she got Hera. So, yeah. But she's fine here. So, we'll have to see what's going on. I'm of the thinking that all these guys are going to turn to allies under Yamato. I just think that because Who's Who is just too important because he's the one who introduced us to Nika in the first place, and he was the kickoff for all that lore, which has been nonstop since he brought it up. So I can't see him going anywhere. And then I think Page 1 and Ulti have a bigger role to play as allies in the future. I don't know about the rest of these cat goons, but they'll probably just be infantry in the future because I can see all of them being tamed as well, and then maybe Wano will just have an army of yokai and ogres / onis at their beck and call to protect the land under Momonosuke, who technically is being rented these guys via Yamato, because Yamato, being the daughter of Kaido, most likely would be their overall boss. But I do think after all this is over, she's going to leave and join the Straw Hats. But moving on with our chapter, we come to Orst Castle. The gang is looking for the key. They enter the throne room and they happen upon the magic circle. I did not know these things stood around after they were used. And Luffy remembers seeing this circle before, but he can't remember where. Of course, this is from Egghead when, well, Saturn was summoned, and then how he then, I guess, summoned or sent down a call for the rest of the 5 elders to be summoned. So this is weird that they stick around, and Rodo or Ro informs us that in some countries, these are used to summon demons. We know this for a fact because the first time we see something like this is in the weird village where we have regular humans, and in the gulf or cavern or canyon of said village, we have a bunch of long arm members about, because the humans of that island or village were trying to summon Satan, and they thought they did when Brook broke through the ceiling after he was pawed away by Kuma. So yeah, that's the first time we saw such a circle. So it's always been associated with like creepy figures, and recently is the first time they've actually been shown to work. I do think this is a Devil Fruit power though, ultimately. I think this is a power from Eam specifically. But to continue, we see someone calling out to Luffy, and then the group are attacked by flying axes, much like Vanderdecken using the Mark fruit, but it's not Vanderdecken. It is not. We see the man who is wearing the robes and the Casa hat, and it's someone called Yasan. So no, my brothers, thank you for sticking by me all this time. This indeed was not Shiki. I was big wrong. I do not know why there was so much playing around with all these strong world hints from the grasshopper in Rhodes Toy Country all the way up to Loki's many animal friends, there were strong world references abound, flowing out of the pipes like water. But it resulted in our mystery man that we met way back in the day in the decks of the New World cover story, having a drink with Crocus and Laboon. We see that that man is actually Yasan. And Yasan is a cover for something else, but we'll get to that in a minute. So this guy has heard rumors about Luffy. He knows that he defeated Kaido, and apparently he went to Wano, but was no help in Wano. That's weird. I don't know. Not looking good, because we know who this guy is, but we'll get to that. And apparently this guy is the husband and the father of Ripley and Colin. And now we get to a point that I was going to cover at a later date. But Zach and I were thinking about this on a episode of the Rose Skull podcast. Can't remember which episode, but we were thinking that the giant children were probably at least 10 to 20 years old, and we find out the ages, which really does start to inform us about how giants age throughout the story. So Colin is 20 years old. So that means that giants are, I guess, kind of like Saiyans. They start off like really like shrunken down in terms of proportions, and then one day they just kind of like blow up like weeds, which is weird. But he's 20 and then Ripley is 80. So I don't know where the timeline is. So I guess Road, who I believe is in his 60s, I guess that's where giants start to pop up as adults, which means I guess in human years, Road and Luffy are probably really similar in age. And this goes for Loki too, now that I think about it, because Loki is also in his 60s. They're both 63. So by the time they hit 60, I guess they're the equivalent of like a 15 or 17-year-old. But Colin seems to be around 10. I wonder if in the SBS we're going to get like a human to giant age chart. Because in being 80, that's not too far off from 60. So Ripley is probably in her 20s or early 30s, if that's the case. Which is crazy to think about. That's wild. But yeah, we were thinking about that, and I'm glad we were kind of close in our conclusions. That's really cool. And I'm glad through these conversations, we're getting more and more about the genealogy of Elbaf. Considering that, as they keep talking, Yasan mentions love knows no bound. Mixed-raced people have existed throughout history. And then we get a very interesting list of races. Buccaneers, Dosudaras, long legs, long necks, and wontons. Now, Buccaneers, we know, are half giants from the Kuma flashback, okay? They have at least giant's blood in them. We know that. They're not exactly half giants, but they appear to be, and they have giant's blood within them. Dosudaras is something completely new. We'll see if it's translated in a different way at a later date, but Dosundaras, we don't know what they are. If I were to hazard a guess, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Dosundaras are what the Yeti Cool brothers were, furry giants. Because I've often thought that Dosundaras, presumably, or the Yeti Cool brothers, are what happens when you mix a mink with a giant. Because they look so distinctly different even from all the giants and giant adjacent races that we have seen in One Piece thus far. Long legs, that's easy, that's Smoothie, that's Baron Tamago, etc., etc. We know what those are. Long necks are an interesting name because usually they're referred to as snake necks, but long necks are, of course, in reference to guys like, say, Charlotte Amonde. And it's weird because we really haven't had a confirmed pure-raced long neck in the story, though I assume that Vice Admiral Red King is most likely a long neck, seeing as how, well, he has a long neck, and there's a tattoo on the back of his neck that says Marine, and most long necks have a choker or a clasp around their necks, so that could just be an equivalent of that. So Red King most likely is the first purebred long neck or snake neck in the series, but we'll have to wait and see. And then, of course, wontons are mentioned. Now, the only canonical wonton that we have is Big Pan. of the former Foxy Pirates. I know there was one in the Burndy World filler named Sebastian. He was blind, but he's not canon. So yeah. And he was weird because he just looked like a big fisherman. He didn't look humanoid like Big Pan. But yeah, Big Pan is the only canonical one. And he is a giant mixed with Fishman, which makes sense because as we see with Watasume, fishmen get as big as giants. So that coupling makes sense. And then he goes on to say, such hybrids are rare and often struggle to thrive on their own, but in every era, there have always been those who are more flexible, if you know what I mean. Which, seeing as how they're mentioned all together like this, Buccaneers, Longnecks, Dotsudatas, Longleg, and Wonton, I wonder if all three of those guys, meaning Dosundadas, Longleg, and Longneck, I wonder if those, in addition to Long Arms, if they're all technically half giants. Because I could see in a very funny way that if, let's say, you were a half giant, right? And the rest of your body was regularly proportioned except one part. So one part was extremely long as a reference to your giant heritage. So you're just like weirdly disproportionate in that way, if that makes sense. So with the long arms, it's their arms. With the snake necks or long necks, it's their necks. And with the long legs, it's their legs. Dosundadas, I'm not sure. I think they're half minks, half giants. Buccaneers, they are often always big and they have some sort of secret ability. We don't know what that is, but they are said to be giant related, and then wontons are brought up. Oddly, ogres and onis are not brought up. So that's something interesting too. But to continue, it's also very funny that Yasan is wearing a flowered shirt, which is something that another character is known for wearing. Sanji also wears a flowered shirt at some points. He wore one in Skypiea, and that was his outfit in Egghead. So that's something to just think about. And they continue to talk about the key. They get bored and walk off. What's also very funny when Yasan declares himself as a missionary of love, Luffy says, I bet Sanji ends up like him when he's older. That's a very astute observation, considering what happens a little later. So, Yasan questions Luffy about Loki's character and if he's a bad guy. Luffy says if he's a bad guy, I'll just beat him to a pulp and lock him back up. It's said the only person who was able to do that was Shanks. But continuing, we get a little flashback of two characters arguing with Roger. And it appears that Scopper Gaban is the level-headed one between himself and Rayleigh as he tries to talk sense into Roger. I wonder why Scopper Gaban is being brought up here. And then Yasan tells Road to move the throne, which then we get a cut back to the village in which Oimon is talking about the Roger Pirates and how there was a guy right next to Rayleigh who was the left hand of the Pirate King. It's said that said left hand was able to fend off hundreds of pirates with just 2 axes. And in the process of doing that, while Roger was recuperating in the hospital, the man with the 2 axes was able to deforest an entire mountain when fighting the hundreds of pirates who came from Roger's head. That is why this guy is known as the Mountain Eater. Interesting. And Sanji's hearing this story as it's being told. So yeah, the left hand of the Pirate King is known as the Mountain Eater. We go down behind the throne into a treasure chamber, which the key is being held. However, the man who is called Yasan is revealed to be Scopper Gaban, baby. For the first time, we are seeing him in the flesh. So no, he is not the man marked by flame. We find that out here. The man marked by flame in the black ship is somebody else. This guy is Scopper Gaban, and he takes hold of the key. Okay. All right. So the parallels with Sanji are vast. This also means that Scopper Gaban made it with a giant. And I don't think that story is why he's called the Mountain Eater. Because, oh boy, a human made it with a giant. He's the truth. He ate her mountain. But seriously though, seriously, I'm willing to bet, seeing as how Gabon is here and he is the father of Colon, most likely Ripley is the one with the pink hair. Because we see Colon, when he's colored in the anime, he has pink hair, so Ripley most likely has pink hair. With that being said, the flowered shirt is very interesting because we see him wearing something similar when the Roger Pirates were fighting the Whitebeard Pirates in the Odin flashback. This is also very interesting because Sanji has worn a flower shirt from time to time. And based on him being compared to Sanji by Luffy, this makes a lot of sense. Now, in addition, I do wonder if Luffy is correct and this is where Sanji's kind of gonna go. Like, is Sanji going to be with Gerd at the end of the story? That's something just to think about. But in him being here, I don't know. It's so fascinating because I thought this was going to be Shiki. It makes so much sense. And the community was right on this one. It just threw me off because the vertically striped cape with the Casa hat are things you would think that Shiki would wear, because Shiki too has been to Wano, because we know that Kurozumi grandmother turned into him when she was the user of the clone fruit. So it's obvious that he went to Wano at some point as well. And every time we see him, he is draped in a kimono of some sort. So that's why I always thought it was him. And then, of course, all the strong world animals popping up just led to that being him. But in this case, no, that's not the case. It's Scopper Gabon. So Luffy's going to have to fight the left hand of the Pirate King for Loki's key. And we do have a break next week. So that's to be expected, because these things usually happen before a big whole number comes up. Because, of course, this is chapter 1139. We're then going to go on to 40, and then possibly something big is going to happen right after that in 41. So, yeah. Those two are usually the points to look out for big things to happen. So yeah, we'll see how things turn out, but I'm glad we're finally seeing Scopper Gabon. Now, I wonder, does he have a devil fruit? Because the funny thing about this and the Roger Pirates as a whole, Roger is not confirmed not to have a devil fruit. You can't trust what Kaido says. Kaido says he conquered the world with just haki. We don't know that. I made a video about that a while ago. I think he has a devil fruit because their Jolly Roger doesn't necessarily make sense for the time they have been active and the different looks that Roger has had over the course of the story, because he didn't always have a big mustache. With that being said, too, the only one who is confirmed not to have a devil fruit is Rayleigh, because Rayleigh has been shown in his old age swimming. So we know Rayleigh doesn't have a devil fruit. Scopper Gabon, however, is free for interpretation. We don't know what he has. And I will say, this has been being said a lot since spoilers broke out for this chapter, but the Roger Pirates have some great taste in women, because you have Roger with Port-Gas de Rouge, you have Rayleigh with Shaki, who was a former empress of Amazon Lily, and then you have Scopper Gabon and his young giant wife. He likes them big. I say Scopper Gabon's the strongest out of three, because oh boy. But yeah, we're getting a lot in this chapter. I got my genealogy, which I always wanted. This is a great coupling of what we find out in chapter 1138 with the Horned Giants. This is all very good. I hope we get more, because the last ones left are Onis, and now we have to figure out who are Dos and Dadas. I do hope the Yeti Cool Brothers pop up, or someone who looks like them pop up, because I think that's what they are. They have to be. So we'll have to see how that's translated later on, and I'll probably do a follow-up video on that. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Paulipede Works.